Since I was a child, my grandparents raised and loved me. Sadly, my beloved grandmother passed away in a small accident. Around that time, I unexpectedly got a message from my sister-in-law, who I hadn't heard from in a long time. The message said, "I need you to take care of your grandmother, who passed away 3 months ago." I had so much I wanted to say, but my dear grandmother was already gone. I saw her passing with my own eyes, and this message seemed to trigger the beginning of many things coming to light. My name is Linda Thompson, and I'm a 45-year-old single woman. The last time I had a serious relationship with a man was back in college. After that, I focused on work, getting a job in the marketing department of a big cosmetics company. I worked long hours, often on weekends, and soon, I realized I had missed the chance to get married. 6 years ago, I switched careers and took a desk job at a nursing home. I used to spend an hour and a half commuting on packed trains, and if I made it home on the last train, I considered myself lucky. Now, I work close to home, just a 10-minute bike ride away, with normal working hours and very little overtime. But I didn't change jobs because of that. I've never moved out of my childhood home, even though I'm financially stable and can take care of household chores. The reason I stayed is that I love my family, especially my grandmother. I was born and raised in California, and my family consists of my parents, grandparents, and my older brother, Brian, who is 5 years older than me. He's now 50. While I love my family, my feelings toward Brian are complicated. I used to admire him as my older brother. He was kind and always looked out for me. But after he graduated from college and got a job selling cars, he changed. He moved out on his own, and 2 years later, he married a woman he worked with. After that, we drifted apart. He never comes to visit for holidays like Thanksgiving, spring break, or Christmas. I know he lives somewhere in the South, but that's all I know. I don't know if he has kids or even what he looks like now. I can't remember the last time we spoke or saw each other. It's been about 5 years since I became a manager, and I've been really busy ever since. The last thing I remember Brian saying to me was, "I'm leaving everything related to home to you." Now, I just think of him as an uncaring person. That's why I changed careers and stayed in my childhood home, to protect it. My parents are both retired, and my 93-year-old grandfather had a stroke a few years ago. Even though he recovered, he still needs constant care, and my parents are looking after him. Then there's my grandmother, Betty Thompson, who's 92. Grandma Betty is very special to me. Since both of my parents worked, my grandparents, especially Grandma Betty, took care of me and my siblings when we were little. She taught me everything I needed to know to get by in life. These days, she doesn't go out much, but she's still active enough to walk around the house. That's why I decided to switch jobs to work at a nursing home, to be there for her if anything ever happened. One day, as I was getting ready to leave for work, Grandma Betty called out, "You forgot something." I thought I didn't, but she handed me some black licorice candies, which had always been a favorite of ours. I smiled, thanked her, and put the candies in my pocket before heading to work. Then, something terrible happened. Grandma Betty had a serious accident. My dad told me she had gone upstairs to hang laundry on the balcony, but she missed a step on the stairs and fell. We always worried about this happening and told her not to go upstairs because the stairs were dangerous. But like me, Grandma Betty was stubborn and believed in doing things herself. No one was to blame, it was just a tragic accident that could have happened anytime. Grandma Betty suffered serious fractures in her leg and pelvis and never returned home from the hospital. Just 4 months later, she passed away due to old age. Of course, I was heartbroken and I cried a lot. But I'm an adult now, and I'm the one supporting the household. I couldn't let myself stay lost in sorrow for too long. We held the funeral, cremation, and burial after her passing. I had to take care of everything after Grandma Betty passed away. She was originally from the Midwest, and we don't have many close relatives anymore. During a family meeting, we decided to have a small funeral with just close family members. We also had to invite my brother and his wife. I thought they would come without a second thought, but I was wrong. I couldn't reach them by phone or WhatsApp, so I sent an email. Still, no reply. As a last resort, I sent a text, and finally, on the day of the cremation, I got a message. "I'm very busy overseas for work. Sorry, I can't make it. I'll send the money later." I didn't care about the money. Seeing that message, I found myself saying out loud, "Is his job really more important than saying goodbye to Grandma, who loved us so much?" It was hard to believe. At the cremation, Grandma Betty looked peaceful, as if she were just sleeping. We placed flowers in her casket along with a photo of Grandpa and her favorite black licorice candy. As I did this, my feelings toward my brother changed, and I started to resent him. Time passed, and now it's winter. For me, it doesn't really matter what season it is. Spring, summer, fall, or winter. It all feels the same. I even thought about quitting my job, but Grandpa is still alive, and my parents will need care in the future. I have to keep working to support them. These thoughts were on my mind as I was just going through the motions at work one day. Then, during lunch break, I got a call from an unexpected person. If her number hadn't been saved, I wouldn't have answered. It was my sister-in-law, Heather Thompson, my brother Brian's wife. The only time we ever really talked was briefly after their wedding, so I was surprised she was calling now. I almost ignored it, but the phone kept ringing, so I sighed and picked it up. Yes, this is Linda. Sorry to disturb you at work. This is Heather, Brian's wife. It's been a while, she said, sounding apologetic. That's right, Heather is 46, older than me and in a higher position at her job, but she's always been humble. When she suddenly decided to marry my brother, she made sure to greet my parents and me on his behalf. She's always been kind, so I couldn't understand why she was reaching out now. Is there something you need? I tried my best not to sound cold as I asked. Heather hesitated before replying. This is hard for me to talk about, but it's about Betty, your grandmother. I froze for a second. What about my grandmother? I asked, trying not to raise my voice. We've been taking care of her on my husband's orders, but it's been over a month now. Could you come to pick her up? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wait, what? Was all I could manage to say. My mind was racing. Think, Linda, think. So you're saying you've been taking care of my grandmother Betty, who died 3 months ago? I finally asked, knowing how crazy it sounded, but what Heather was saying didn't make sense. Yes, we've been taking care of Betty at our place. She started, but then stopped. Wait, what? She died 3 months ago. Her voice was full of shock. Let's calm down, I suggested, trying to think clearly, and Heather agreed. A few minutes later, I explained to her that my grandmother had passed away. But Heather's response left me even more confused. She said that at the house where she and my brother, Brian, live, they were told to take care of my grandmother until arrangements were made at her home. They'd been living with her all this time. At that moment, 2 things became clear to me. First, Heather wasn't lying. And second, if that's true, then Brian is the one lying. I had a feeling something like this might happen, but why would Brian tell such an obvious lie? Before dealing with that, I needed to talk to him. I need to get in touch with Brian right away, but he's almost impossible to reach on his mobile, I told Heather. I've never used my husband's phone either. He won't let me, she added. But I think I can talk to him on my phone while he's home. Has he been working from home? I asked. Yeah, more often lately. I think I can get him on a video call, she said. A video call might work, but there was one problem. I don't even know where you two live now, I pointed out. We've been living in Vice City, California for over 10 years. It's easy for us to visit your place, Linda, Heather replied. Heather and I agreed to talk to Brian using her phone later that night, and we ended the call. We made a few other plans, though I had mixed feelings. Vice City, where they lived, was just the next town over. How much more lying could he do? Expecting me to care for some stranger's elderly woman just months after Grandma passed away was beyond me. It felt repulsive. At 8 p.m., as planned, I called Brian on Heather's cell phone. Heather was sitting in my room waiting. Despite my constant attempts to reach him before, Brian answered her phone after just 3 rings. I made sure to put the call on speaker so Heather could hear everything. Where are you, Heather? You haven't even made dinner yet. Brian's voice came through, arrogant and impatient. This wasn't the Brian I knew. It's me, Brian, I said firmly. Huh? He sounded confused. I paused, waiting for him to catch up. That's Linda, isn't it? Where's Heather? I'm here, Heather answered calmly. What? Why are you with Linda? Brian stammered for a moment before regaining his composure. Don't tell me you told her about that. Yes, I did, Heather replied, maintaining her calm. I told you it was too early to talk about it, Brian exclaimed. I had had enough of his dodging. Heather said you've been working remotely lately, I began. So what? I could almost picture the scowl on his face. Let's talk face-to-face on a video call using a remote work app. I'll send you the ID and password I suggested. If you refuse, I'll take Linda and leave, Heather added, backing me up. Brian hesitated but finally agreed. Fine, he said reluctantly. I sent the details using Heather's phone. A moment later, Brian's face appeared on the screen. He looked a bit heavier than I remembered, but it was definitely him. Brian asked, What's so important that we need to talk face-to-face? I'm busy. His attempt to act clueless made me really angry. It's about our grandmother, I snapped. To my shock, Ryan calmly said, You must be misunderstanding. Grandma isn't dead. I'm taking care of her at my place. Didn't you ask for this? What? I was speechless. Was he really so scared of Heather finding out the truth that he was lying like this? It made me furious, and I was on the verge of tears. I reminded him, I sent you a text message. I don't remember, Brian replied. Grandma is here with me now. Do you want me to bring her to you? Brian's defiance was infuriating. I didn't have time to cry. Brian left and came back a few minutes later with an old woman in a wheelchair. Say hello, Grandma, Brian said. The woman said in a shaky voice, Linda, it's been a while. I'm Betty. I felt a surge of anger. This woman was not my beloved grandmother. My real grandma would never call me Linda, and this woman was completely different. Brian tried to explain, as you age, your appearance changes. Grandma has been showing signs of dementia, so her memories might be unclear. I was done with his lies. So you won't acknowledge the death certificate from the district office? Brian smirked. Of course not. Documents can be faked these days. I was ready for this. Just wait, I'll show you some evidence. Leaving Brian looking confused, I went to get the proof. When I returned to the room, I had Grandpa with me. Hello, Brian. Long time no see, you ungrateful one. Grandpa, you're supposed to be bedridden. Brian's eyes widened in shock. I'm not bedridden, Grandpa said. I'm just not able to go to the bathroom on my own, but my mind is still sharp. I heard everything from Linda. Are you saying that the woman there with you is my wife Betty? Nonsense. Betty was much more beautiful. Cornered, Brian hung up the call, probably trying to escape the video chat. Heather, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. Are you running away? Brian's face went pale as he saw the evidence on the screen. How did you find out? He asked, clearly shocked. Brian, you underestimated me, I replied calmly. I've been suspicious for a while. Your grandmother, who kept mentioning the name Catherine, gave me a clue. I double-checked with Linda and she didn't recognize the name. I had hired a private detective to investigate. The results came in quickly, photos of Brian with a woman named Catherine, who was apparently his lover. He had been preparing to divorce Heather and had even planned to move her grandmother into a care home to make way for Catherine. Heather, who had trusted her intuition, had confirmed all of this. Brian had been trying to win favor with Catherine by pretending to care for Heather's grandmother. He planned to marry Catherine and leave Heather without blame. Heather proved everything, and now she was confronting Brian. She's incredibly sharp, far beyond what her appearance might suggest. Do you have anything to say for yourself? I asked Brian, ready to listen. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to deceive anyone, Brian said, bowing his head through the screen. I'll break up with Catherine. Even with today's technology, his remorse was clear, but it couldn't undo the damage. Grandpa, please help me, Brian pleaded. After using Betty and betraying my family, I don't want to see you or Heather again. Grandpa was the most authoritative person here, and he agreed. I never want to see you again either. I've already completed the divorce mediation process, I said firmly. I'm moving back to my parents' house. We'll meet in court next. Goodbye, big brother. With that, I ended the call. I pressed the exit button on my laptop to end the video call. Autumn had arrived, and I was visiting my grandmother's grave alone. With my hands clasped together, I thought about everything that had happened. Brian divorced Heather, and the court ruled heavily in Heather's favor. Brian had to pay a huge amount in alimony and ended up returning home in tears. Grandpa, who is still very sharp, officially disowned Brian. According to Grandpa's will, Brian is no longer considered family. Brian wanted to remarry Catherine, but at his age, with no savings and his reputation ruined, it was difficult. He lost his job at the automobile company and now lives in a small, cheap apartment, doing odd jobs to pay alimony. It's tough for someone over 50 with no special skills to find work again. It's a clear case of reaping what you sow. Most of what I know about Brian now comes from Heather. We've become good friends and meet up often. As I stood up from the gravestone, I said, I'll come again, Grandma. A strong breeze blew, and I heard a voice I loved say, Lynn, thank you. Please take care of your grandpa for a little while. I looked down and saw that I was holding a piece of black candy. I hadn't brought any candy today, so I was surprised. I don't really believe in ghosts, but thinking that Grandma might still be watching over me gives me comfort. I whispered, Thank you, Grandma, looked up at the sky, and left the graveyard.